This is the Virata podcast. In this episode, we are going to talk to Viennese musician Emanuel Schulz. He will talk about his journey in Sahaj, his stories with Shri Mataji, and his experience with the divine music of Mozart.
Alô Brasil! Shri Mataji! Welcome to our Virata podcast. And today we have here a very special guest, Emanuel Schulz. Welcome to our podcast.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, great. So Emanuel is here. So he's a famous Viennese musician and composer. And he one of the Sahaj specialists in Mozart. So we'll talk a little bit about Vienna, about also your journey in Sahaj Yoga, and also about this fantastic musician, this genius incarnation that was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Okay, so we are having this conversation here in London. So, Mani, can you talk a little bit what you came to do here in London?
Well, I always liked London. Like when I was a teenager, I tried to come at least once in 2 years to London because I really loved the city. And when we talk about Mozart, later I found out that Mozart was also in London, but not when he was grown up, but when he was a kid, when he was 8 years old. And that's especially interesting when you think about Sahaja Yoga and what Shri Mataji told about Mozart and about William Blake, because of course William Blake was here in London. And I think it's not a coincidence that when Mozart came to London at the age of 8, William Blake was here at the same age. So they were both in London. And Shri Mataji told an Austrian yogi who is now living in, I think, Sheffield, Walter Satzer. She told him that Mozart was an incarnation of Sage Narada or Narad Muni. And it's interesting that the incarnation of Narada and the incarnation of Bhairava is here in London, or was here in London at the same time, and they were even at the same age. So Narada is more connected to Sri Vishnu, and Bhairava is connected to Sri Shiva. So, like the Supreme Lord.
And could have they met each other?
They might have met. I mean, we don't know about that because William Blake, as a kid, was not famous. So you would not find about that. But I've heard that they were quite close to each other, from the location.
Oh, right.
Because I mean, London was not so big, and I think they were a few blocks away, located, and I think that it's 1.5 years that Mozart was here in London. So
1.5 years,
and I think people knew about him because he was a prodigy and had concerts. There's a statue of Mozart where standing on some books playing violin because the people could not see him because he was a kid. So standing on some books and playing violin. So the statue is still in London. But I guess that William Blake and his family knew about Mozart.
What he came to do here in London? Why he came to?
Yeah, they wanted to make a career. I mean, the father, Mozart's eternal fame started when he played for the Empress Maria Theresia in Vienna at the age of 6. So this is one of the most famous situations of his
But
life.
his father was already famous, no, in Vienna.
Yeah, he was in Salzburg. Leopold Mozart. He was a famous musician and had written a book about violin playing and about the style, how to interpret music in that time, that period. And so we still nowadays musicians read this book to know how to play properly the music of that time. So it's not only about violin playing, but also about the way how to play music of that period.
Okay.
So the father, of course, invested much effort and time into his children. Not only Wolfgang, actually he called himself Wolfgang Amadei Mozart, or sometimes Wolfgang Amadeo Mozart. Yeah, actually, Amadeus is like an invention of the people that came after him. Like he never
really?
called
He
himself.
never
like
called
that.
himself Amadeus.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
not his name. Actually, in his baptism certificate, it says Theophilus or Gottlieb. The German or the Greek version of the name.
Okay.
No, there's no.
No Amadeus.
No, but he like when he made a signature, he would write Amadei, or sometimes Amadeo, like the Italian version. So the reason why they went through whole of Europe
All right.
to present, especially Wolfgang, but also the sister, because when they played for the Empress, the sister also performed.
Okay.
So she might have been even more more famous if there was no Wolfgang. Perhaps she would have also been recognized more.
I even have seen that they did a movie now about the sister of Mozart, showing that at that time was more difficult for girls to become famous as well.
I mean, they were like mostly they thought that women perhaps they will perform, but they will not compose. But perhaps she would have also been a composer if she wasn't.
It's interesting if he was Narada, maybe she was also. I mean, it's not necessary that she would be incarnation.
you never know. But they had a special bond.
So they were
his sister.
very close.
There
to
were
each other.
even pieces that not only in the beginning but later where Mozart composed a piece where they both played. It's a concerto for 2 pianos and orchestra, and it was composed for his sister and himself. So they were playing and with the orchestra, and it's very interesting because the first piano was played by the sister, by Nanal, and
What's the name of the sister again?
Nanal.
Nanal.
Maria Anna.
Mariana.
Nanal was her nickname.
A nickname, okay.
And Mozart was playing, like Wolfgang Mozart was playing the second piano. And he composed it like the first piano starting in a higher pitch, in a higher register, because it's the woman. And then when the second piano starts, it's played in a lower range because it's the man playing. So if there's a woman that's a pianist and a man, then the woman should play the first piano in that case, because it's a bit like a biographical piece. Because you see there's the sister playing and then the brother is playing.
And he was younger than the sister, or
Yeah,
okay.
He was a bit young. I think when they played for the Empress, he was 6 and the sister was 8, I think. And when they came to London, that was not. It was a bit unusual that they stayed so long. but
Because it was part of his tour, or he came to
yeah,
learn
I mean
something?
they went to almost every country
in Europe.
in Europe. They went to, of course, many places in Germany and to Switzerland and, of course, to Italy. That was his favorite country. But I think they went
At that
through all
time,
these.
how was actually the the map of music? Let's say, I think Italy was quite strong, and Germany, and there were other countries who were also
Yeah.
very strong in the classical opera music.
Yeah, Italy was very important, especially before, like in the Baroque time.
All right.
And there are many Italian Baroque composers that are very popular, even now. And Mozart was very interested in the opera, Italian opera. So he composed many Italian operas. So in his letters, he always wrote how he's looking forward to seeing Italy and going to Italy, and before he ever had seen Italy, and it was really nice that he came to some places as a very young composer, like 13 or 14, like he came to Florence or Milano, and should compose an opera, and he came like 2 weeks before the opera should take place, and there he met the singers, and then he composed for them. So it was really in a very fast development. These operas were created by him. But the interesting thing is because Shri Mataji told us that Mozart was Sage Narada, there are certain aspects that are interesting when you know that, because Narada is like a divine messenger, so he brings messages to the three worlds. Like he goes from heaven to the humans and to hell, and everybody likes him. Like, that's interesting. I always say, I guess also Hitler liked Mozart music. So it's everybody likes Mozart. Everybody likes Narada. But the thing is that he always changes the place. Like he's never settling down.
I see.
For a long time. And Mozart was the same. He was from 6 years, from the age of 6 years, he was like on tour for, I don't know, 15 years or something. Like he always went to every country in Europe, and that's a big difference to most other composers, because when you, I don't know, look at Johann Sebastian Bach, he was always in some regions in Germany, and did not go on great tours. Georg Friedrich Händel, he had a career in Germany, then in Italy, and then in England. So that's also interesting. But Mozart was constantly traveling. And still he was composing such a lot, and his legacy is so huge, although he died so early. He died at the age of 35.
35.
Yeah, 35. So if you take all this traveling time and take that away, he had least time to compose, and he composed the most music. But
so many times he was composing when he was traveling then.
Yeah, perhaps he was not writing it, but he was composing in his head.
Okay.
And that's another thing, Narad Muni or Sage Narada, he has this boon of spiritual knowledge, and he's like omniscient. He knows everything about the future, the past, and the present. I think that was a boon either from Shri Shiva or from Brahma Deva, who is actually his father. Like he's He's a son of Brahma, and that's why he represents the music itself. I think it's not like a composer, but he's really like the music incarnate, and this thing about this, like, to be omniscient, or to know everything about past, present, and future. The gods ask always him. So some people in the internet, they refer to him as the Google of the celestials. but he knew the future.
Okay.
So he made like prophecies also to Rakshasas. Like he could tell, like the Rakshasas were actually afraid of him, because they were afraid that he would come and say, you will die soon, or I don't know. They were always afraid of dying in their physical form. But Mozart is always described as somebody who saw a full piece, like who was had inspiration for a whole piece. Normally a composer, like we are both composers, so when we have an idea or inspiration, it might be a melody or a theme or like a chorus or a verse or something. But I have the feeling like then the inspiration for our piece would be perhaps 5% or 10% of the song, and then we work on it and we try something. But Mozart seems to have like the inspiration for the 100% of the piece, like that he was so connected that that he had inspiration for the whole piece, and that's not like any other composer that I know. And that's, I think, why he was so fast also in
how many compositions in his lifetime?
There is this Köchelverzeichnis, like the registered pieces of Mozart by Ritter von Köchel, and he has like 626 registered pieces in the Köchelverzeichnis.
Okay.
But like one piece might be a small piano piece, but another number might be the magic flute.
Okay.
Like some pieces are really huge, and like the operas are the biggest ones, of course. They're like pieces of 3 or 4 hours sometimes.
And when did actually your story with Mozart start? When was you remember the first time that you learned how to play Mozart piece?
Yeah, my story with Mozart started when I was a kid, because I was born in a family of musicians, and for my family Mozart was the god of music. So even before Sahaj Yoga, and but just this number of this
composition
of this 626, like I come back to the beginning later, but that was a funny story, because there are 626 numbers in the Köchelverzeichnis, registered pieces. There are more, but like when Ritter von Köchel, the Knight of Köchel, fixed that
number,
this I don't know, structure, there were 626, and the Requiem was 626, and it was funny because the Requiem is one of my most important, like the most important Mozart pieces, because I'm working in a castle where the Count lived, who commissioned the Requiem of Mozart, and so I'm the artistic director.
How is actually the Requiem of Mozart? Can you just sing a little bit so that people...
Yes, I could play it, but to sing it, it's a bit... yeah, I mean, the last piece of the Requiem, the last piece
is
that
it
he
famous?
composed...
Is it recognizable for most people?
Yeah, it's very famous, but it's more about chords. But the very, very famous is the last piece that Mozart ever composed is the Lacrimosa. and it's like lacrimosa, da di da da da. And then there is like a line that goes up and up and up and up and up, and then he stopped composing, and the next day he died. And this text says like the soul is going into heaven for the last judgment. It's like he composed his own way to heaven. And he died in a Rauhensteingasse, but seeing to the next street, it was called Himmelpfortgasse, like the gate to heaven street. That's nice. But when I moved to the first district of Vienna like a few years ago, and the first district was like Vienna was at the times of Mozart. So there was only that small Vienna. Now we have like 23 districts, and the other districts are all bigger than the first district. But the first district was Vienna, and so when I moved there, I had the feeling I'm moving to the Mozart Vienna. And when I went to the town hall to register, I think the parking plaquette, the parking
Plate,
plaque. Then I had to pick a number, and the number was 626. And of course, that was like a joke. I had a feeling it was a joke of Shri Mataji or of Mozart, because 626 is the number of the Requiem, and I'm always like working as the artistic director of the Mozart Castle Stuppach. I'm always connected to this piece, 626, and it's the sum of all the registered pieces. But so it was like a joke, like Mozart saying, "Welcome to my
My district.
my district."
When Mozart was living, so there was just the first district.
That
of
was Vienna,
Okay.
yeah. So that's why I think in London it was also a bit like that. So it was much smaller.
Yeah.
So the two kids of 8 years, William Blake and Mozart, might have met somehow.
yeah.
But it doesn't really matter if they met, because it's like a vibrational thing. It's not a coincidence. Like two of the most important European incarnations of like the last few thousand years, they were here at the same time in their Ganesha form, in the child form. But like when I was like a kid, I already adored Mozart, and my father and my uncle, they were playing much Mozart, and when I started with Sahaj Yoga at the age of 10, then Mozart became also like meditation music for me.
So you were 10 years old when you got your self-realization against Sahaj. Wow.
That was funny, because my brother, who was also a musician, he was 8 years older, and he came home and he said, "There's somebody called Shri Mataji, and she's a divine incarnation. She's God." And so that was the first.
So your brother was the first one from your family to go to a public program.
Yeah.
Okay.
He started, and later we found out that our cousin was also in Sahaj Yoga, but he didn't tell us. He's called Engelbert, and so then Mozart became even like was rising in our like opinion, even because Shri Mataji said he's a born realized composer, and later we found out he was Sage Narada. So Mozart was everywhere, like in our normal life and in the Sahaj life as a meditation music. And later there were many occasions when we played Mozart for Shri Mataji, and I think Mozart is the only classical composer where we know from Shri Mataji that who he was, like in the celestial times. Or
we know some other composers who were realized or not.
She said about some people that they were born realized, but she never explained that they were an Indian sage
Okay.
or at least I don't know about that. But also like in puja, she always when it's about like they do statues of great people like Mozart. Like she often mentions Mozart when it's
Yeah.
about
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most famous now, like music composers now of all time.
yeah, no, but also the one that Shri Mataji always mentions.
Yeah.
Like she normally she mentions Mozart when she's talking about music or about Western art. And for instance, many years later we performed a very collective opera production with the magic flute, Mozart's magic flute, and Shri Mataji Shri Mataji told us when we played a highlight production of the magic flute in Cabella Ligure near Genova, the evening before Sahasrara Day 1999, and Shri Mataji told us then that she had seen the magic flute in Berlin in an opera house, like in the, I think, Deutsche Oper Berlin. And then next year we had a yogi production again and went to America and played the magic flute with yogi singers and yogi musicians. My wife was playing the cello and my father was playing the cello. I was conducting, and we played it in America again in Riverside Theater, New York, and in Kanajuhare. That was also like before one puja. Yeah, you were there. We didn't know each other.
Yeah, no, not at that time.
And so the magic flute actually is an opera, and I think the only opera that Shri Mataji saw 4 times in a performance. Once in at least 4 times. Perhaps she's seen it
in
more
Germany,
often. But once in an opera in Berlin, and 3 times with our yogi performance. So in once in Cabella and twice in America.
It was funny because I was there in Kanajuhari, and then when people were rehearsing, you have like the woods now in Kanajuhari, and then you would walk on the woods, and then you would listen to some people rehearsing.
yeah, it was funny. Shri Mataji,
and there was a lot of mud.
Yeah,
in
that was terrible.
At that time.
There's a photo where we rehearse and I'm conducting with a suit, like I have a suit, and they're all like dressed properly, but I'm wearing like rubber boots. They are full of mud. That's really like a cultural shock. Like, it doesn't fit together, but it was amazing because Shri Mataji came even to the performance in the theater in Riverside Theater. He just came like a normal person and sat down. We were thinking, we should put the throne or something, but it would have not been possible. There are like fire regulations. It's even more difficult in America than anywhere. And then Shri Mataji just came with Sir CP and her grandson Anand, and they were just like sitting
amazing
in the middle of this theater, and it was really the preparation for this was really hard, and I always thought it cannot. I was thinking it cannot happen, but I didn't tell anybody. But then it was like a miracle. Everything found its way, and everybody played better than they would normally, and they sang better, and it was
You're
really.
directing as well, or you
I was
were
a
the
conducting.
conductor?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was conducting, and of course, Shri Mataji knew that I was very stressed, like in, in the days before, and like in the break of the like in the opera, there's a break in the middle.
Have you conducted before the magic flute?
The magic flute I have not conducted
Okay.
before, but of course, you in the rehearsals you conduct it many times. But like the magic flute was one of the first pieces that I heard as a kid.
All right.
So I really loved it. This was like in my blood, this piece. And the magic flute also became very important for me later in another project, in the archetype project, because all the archetypes are in the magic flute. Like there are the same archetypes that you would find in, I don't know, Star Wars or The Matrix or Lord of the Rings. But Mozart connects these characters, these characteristics to keys, and that was the first time that I had the feeling that certain chakra qualities are connected to special keys. And yeah, but in the break of the performance, like I had the feeling, oh, it's really going well, and I was really relieved. And then Shri Mataji came to me, and she shook my hand. Like she came and she said, "It's going so well," and like this was like a burden fell down, like of
Amazing.
tons of like problems. The weight of so many problems like fell down, and that was really great. And so the magic flute had, we always knew it had some connection to Sri Krishna, of course, because there's this flute, and in the story the flute has some magic, and the flute brings them Tamino and Pamina, they are a new couple, and they together with the flute go through fire and water. So this is there are so many symbols and archetypes that we also have in Sahaja Yoga. There's the guru called Sarastro, and of course he's inspired by Sorasta, so it's Zarathustra, and there is this seeker Tamino who is really open to go on this journey, on this hero's journey that is actually the evolution of our chakras and of the Kundalini. He is attacked by the snake, so the snake starts the story, like also in the creation, in paradise when the snake comes. Shri Mataji explains that in some speeches, and this fire and water, and there are these three boys that represent the innocence. So this I already did some Sahaja Yoga programs where I just used these parts of the magic flute. I did not even have to tell about anything else. I could explain the whole system of meditation and the chakra system with the magic flute.
The music from
so that's, and with the story and ingredients of the story of the magic flute. So that's really special. So
it's also a story that every Viennese knows, the story of the magic flute.
Yeah, because normally people the first time they notice classical music, they might see the magic flute or a children version of the magic flute, and or it's played on TV. There are many occasions where at least people, or they sing some song in school from the magic flute. So it's for most people it's the first time they hear classical music. But even like it's it's an opera in German, but still I think it's the most played opera in the world. Even though it's in German, like
yeah. Sometimes they add subtitles, right, in the local language.
Yeah, but nowadays you play the operas in the original language. Like in the 70s, 80s, or before, they still like translated the operas in, not the Italian ones, I think. Well, even the Italian ones sometimes. But the German operas normally were like then sung in English or in other languages. But now, like, I think since the 90s or the middle of the 80s, everybody tries to do the original language. We had the dialogue in English and the songs in German.
In German,
Yeah.
okay.
That
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
that it was easier to understand.
And you were saying also that Mozart, then he was kind of a superstar, no? When he was in his lifetime. Now everyone recognized him as the genius. But you were also saying that a lot of people, recognize Mozart as that eccentric artist that was portrayed in a movie from the 80s. But he wasn't that difficult character as he was portrayed there, right?
Yeah, the thing is, Mozart was recognized, especially when he was very young. But then there's always the problem when you get older. Then, okay, a 15-year-old is not as interesting as like a 6-year-old or 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So when you more and more become an adult, then the normal people, they might not understand like difference between a genius and a very good composer. So the problem was that he was never really offered a proper job. Like he was a great composer and he had success as a composer, but he did not like get to be the Hofkapellmeister of like Vienna or Paris, or so that was perhaps a problem. But I think even it was meant to be like that, because otherwise he perhaps would have composed less. If he would have like in Vienna, if you have to take care of every Sunday's music for the mass and you have to conduct other people's pieces as well, and it might have been not the right thing for him. But the problem with the movie you were referring to, the Amadeus movie, still is not even the right name. So that's more about like they show like a tiny part of his character. Because if you want to know Mozart, on the one hand you have to know about his music, you have to know the pieces and hear the pieces, listen to the music. On the other hand, you can read the letters that he wrote. There are so many letters you can read, and every letter is different. He shows how creative he was. He never would have expected that anybody reads his letters apart from the one who for whom he wrote it. So he would think we are all crazy to read his letters, because this is not like meant for the public. But there are like 20 books of his letters. So many letters, and some letters are about spirituality, some about like morality, and some are like riddles that to fool his father, that he put the words in the wrong order and he has to like a puzzle, and he was very annoyed about that. Father was annoyed about that. And some are funny letters. Some are like they were all kind of human emotions and like human characteristics. But in the movie, they just took this funny side where he seems like an idiot. Like they always want to to take a genius and knock him down off the knock down the statue and say, yeah, he's a genius, but he must be a stupid person, or
Crazy, yeah.
he must be crazy, or that's always the thing. But you also have to understand that the movie is not a biography of Mozart, but it's about how Salieri, another composer, is jealous of Mozart, and he is like angry with God because he says, he's an idiot, but you give him all this divine inspiration. So it's about the jealousy of another composer, and so he is only portrayed in that way. Of course, you understand that he's a genius in the movie, but you think, like, as a person, as a human being, he is a bit vulgar and not really not up to the level of his compositions. But that's not really true. He was he had many facets in his character.
I remember because I lived like for 5 years in Vienna, and I remember going to I think it was the Volksopera, maybe. And then I have seen the concert when you were actually dressed as Mozart, no?
Yeah.
And then you were conducting an orchestra. So maybe you could tell a little bit about this work with Mozart that you have also in your life, this relation that you have now also with Mozart, perhaps daily.
Yeah. I've I don't know. I had so many connections to Mozart and so many ways of approaching Mozart, from normal concerts as a pianist, as a violinist, then later as a conductor, and also even with fusion music, where we connected Indian music to Mozart's music, because there is one Mozart cantata there, even Brahma is in the text as the creator. So he knew the name of his father, actually. Even as Mozart, he knew the name Brahma, the creator. That's interesting. Huh?
There's a composition with the name Brahma there?
No, it's in the text.
Okay.
Like the text is like you can call God the creator, like Jehovah and Fu and Brahma. So he knew about and it's the proper name. It is not like Krishna or Shiva. It's like the creator is Brahma. So that's even the right for those days. It's for that time.
Yeah,
it's amazing that.
Because I think Indian mythology wasn't so
not so popular.
Yeah.
But Mozart was a Freemason also, so they were open to other cultures.
So he was going to the church. He was Christian.
Yeah, he was. Of course, he was Catholic. Yeah, everybody was Catholic, but he was. He was a member of the Freemason, and also his father joined later. So I think most artists and composers were part of the Freemasons in that time, because they were like open-minded and wanted to know more about other cultures, and they had the feeling of like being equal, like all people there were like equal to each other, no matter if they were like, I don't know, aristocrats or not. But Mozart actually would have been an aristocrat because he got knighted by the Pope.
All right.
So that was one of the highest knighthoods. He was Knight of the Golden Sporn. And that he got because there in Rome there was one of his most famous situations where he went to the Sixtinian Chapel, and there was music Miserere of Allegri, and it was not allowed to own the music of this piece, so you only could hear it there. So and then Mozart went home. He was, I think, like 12 or 13, like a young teenager. And he went home and he wrote the piece down from memory.
Wow.
And then next day he went back and he heard if he was right, and he said, yeah. Then he checked and it was right. So, and you were not allowed to write it in there. So he only wrote it at home from memory. And I think this led to this the knighthood of the Pope. But he never used that. So he would, in Austria, if he used that, like this knighthood, this knight of Mozart, or the Cavaliere, then it would have helped him, because it's like if you're like a doctor, or I don't know, if it was a real high title, high knighthood. I think the knighthood of the Pope meant more than any kings, because there's only one Pope. This was a very high. And the other composers, they used that, like Christoph Willibald Gluck. He was also a knight of the Golden Sporn. But Mozart always says, the heart makes you like an aristocrat, and not like a title or your birth. So that's a nice.
That's very good.
And I think. Yeah. So Rome was an important story. There are many ways. Also, Mozart showed me the way to the archetypes, like to this.
It's good because I think we didn't mention that before, but also one of the things it's that you develop a method called the archetype, right?
Yeah, now I call it the Schulz archetype music, and because Schulz is my surname, and there I connect the archetypes of Carl Gustav Jung to the keys of music, and I developed a musical personality test where you listen to 12 short pieces that are composed in 12 different keys, and then you find out your strongest qualities. So actually you find out like you connect to your own chakra qualities. So the archetypes that Jung describes are actually the deities in our chakras. And it's amazing what Jung says also about like the Kundalini and the Devi, and he describes these qualities. And of course, I use all the archetypes that Shri Mataji explains with the chakras, and so it's a way also to meditate with music and with the chakra qualities, even for non-yogis who are not interested in India. So if there are people there a bit afraid of India or of gurus or chakras, but with the archetypes it's very easy to reach those people.
So these pieces, let's say, they work directly on your certain system, and they awaken the qualities combined to each chakra. Is that right?
Yeah. On the one hand, the key every key has a different like color or a different mood, but then of course I compose a piece that represents these qualities like innocence and.
How long did it take for you to develop this system?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on this with this system since 20 years, I would say. So, but I could say I started as a teenager, like in my head, because when I studied the magic flute, at least when we were doing the magic flute for Shri Mataji, I understood that there were some chakras represented in certain pieces of the magic flute. So that perhaps was the.
So you work also as music therapy, so that you could potentially clear one chakra that has a blockage through music, right?
Yeah. It works like that. Every key has a like a major chord, like bom bom bom, and so for instance the key of the Muladhara would connect 3 chakras. So if you play these 3 notes, like bom bom bom, would connect the Muladhara to Nabi and to Vishuddhi. So when you listen to these notes and put your attention to the chakra, to the 3 chakras, and you could even sing it, like in the collective, it's very nice to do that. Then it's easier to focus or to put your attention to these chakras because you hear these notes, and that causes the Kundalini to really work on these chakras. It makes your attention stronger. And then when you did that, then I play the composition. So
the 3 notes are the chords.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are like the chord of the first degree of the key. It's called tonic in classical music theory.
Okay.
But actually, that would be like a music meditation, so that I can do for every chakra, and some of these pieces I composed in Cabela Castle, like when Shri Mataji was 1 floor above me.
So you were staying in the castle?
Yeah, I was composing there.
Oh my God!
Like there was one piano because Rosario, who was always driving Shri Mataji, he had a piano, and he let me compose there, and then I composed some of the chakra music, and the inspiration,
amazing,
of course, was very strong there because Shri Mataji was up in her flat, or in her, like in the living room, or and this was a great experience because inspiration you cannot explain, but of course it comes from Shri Mataji, it comes from God, and the archetypes, like the personality test. Normally you listen to short music, so the music meditation I will play longer versions, but in the musical personality test you listen to short, like 4 short pieces, and then again 4 short pieces, because you see which of your qualities is awakened most easily through the music, and this result can lead to like self-discovery through music, like to understand which of the divine qualities are your strongest, and of course that increases the self-confidence and the self-esteem, and also the respect for others, because they might have different qualities, and so this personality test on the one side gives you some like insights, but on the other hand I can also analyze like companies or I don't know, hotels, brands, and compose a music for them that really represents their archetypes. So it's for me it's a tool for composition also, and
so it's really about the identity, like brand identity, and
but actually
his own personality.
It's a music meditation also, and of course it's a kind of therapeutic music, because it's the subtle system builds the base of our well-being, and of the organs, and of everything connected to the body. And actually even the World Health Organization says that it's health is not only about like disease and body disease of the body, but includes also other things, like the social well-being and
mental
and the nervous system and everything. So actually this kind of meditation and music meditation is really a part of the this how the World Health Organization describes health, the state of health. And there was one situation with Mozart where we played Mozart for Shri Mataji at the airport in Vienna. And we also, my wife was there, Elizabeth, and we played a quintetto of Mozart for clarinet and string quartet. And we had only prepared the first movement, and then we played that. And normally, you could be happy if you play one piece, and then perhaps somebody else would come, or no music anymore. And then Shri Mataji always said we should go on playing, and of course she knew that we had only prepared the first movement, but there were like 4 movements, and then I always, she was always looking to me because I was sitting in her direction, and then I thought, Shri Mataji, you know that we have not prepared the second, but the second movement is slow, and we try, and then we played that, and Shri Mataji at the same time was working on a sick person, or on somebody who had multiple sclerosis, and she was giving her vibrations, and then we were playing the slow movement. There was no problem. And then Shri Mataji was go on playing, and then I thought, okay, Shri Mataji, the minuet is not so difficult. We can play that. So we tried that, and it was okay. And then Shri Mataji was more, and then came the real difficult movement, the finale, the fast finale.
But you knew already the piece, or?
Yeah, but we had played it perhaps 2 years before.
Oh my God!
But we had not practiced it and not rehearsed it. But it went perfect. Amazing. It was great. There's even a video on YouTube from that occasion.
So you can leave in the description of this video.
Shri Mataji had a real speech, held a speech, and then there was this. She worked on this person, and we were playing Mozart, and she will always let us play, and go on, and afterwards we heard that Shri Mataji said that the music helped her, the Mozart music helped her to work on
that person. Okay, amazing.
So, I think actually the music always has an effect on us, but it's if you really use it in a specific way, and you really use divine music that has an intention.
Music is vibration. And also one thing that I've noticed recently is that music is so important, because we are so much in our mental level. Most people are thinking all the time, and music goes straight to the heart. So it really allows new people also to experience this bhakti, let's say, that comes from the songs, from the bhajans, and at the same time go deeper in their meditation. I think it's quite powerful as well.
Yeah, for instance, my wife Elizabeth, the first time she really felt strong vibrations was when there was somebody playing music. There was somebody playing guitar, I think. So for her, that was the first strong experience with the vibrations, with music. And
so one thing that I wanted to ask you, it's about how was because a lot of people say that Mozart died he was poor, and how was actually the end of his life?
Yeah, at the end of his life, he had too much to do. He composed 2 operas at the same time.
So he was working a lot.
Yeah, he was working a lot, but he got sicker and sicker, and somehow when he composed the Requiem, which is actually a death mass, this castle where I work as an artistic director, the countess of this castle, she died, and so she So Mozart composed a death mass for her.
But ended up being for
Yeah, but
himself.
somehow like he could not finish, he could not complete the piece because he died himself.
Okay.
So that made this myth about Mozart even bigger, because he, like, you don't compose more than one requiem in your life. And when he composed his first requiem, he died during the composition. So this is a special. This makes his life more special than all other composers, because this is a myth. You cannot invent this story in a better way, because it's just.
But when he died, he was famous. No,
He was famous, but like he had several job offers. So in the next few years he would have been very, very successful. He had big success in Prague. In Prague he was more successful than in Vienna. But he just died too early, because all the composers that were really settled well in their lifetime, they died at an older age. Like they died when they was like 55 or 60. But he was just 1 or 2 years later, he already was considered the greatest composer everywhere.
Amazing.
And in Germany, even before that, there's the story that Beethoven went back. He wanted to learn with Mozart, but then he went back to Bonn, and in the orchestra Beethoven played the viola, and they already played the Mozart operas. So he was considered the greatest composer in many places already. But there was like no internet, and it was another kind of career. The only people who heard the piece were the people who went to this concert or to this opera, or who could perhaps play it at home, a piece on the piano.
And how was it that time? You know, like people. Was it popular to go to the operas, or just the elite, so just the upper class who would go?
Yeah, the upper class would go to the royal, like to the state opera, but the Magic Flute was played for the people in another place, in the Freihaustheater.
Okay.
So that was like a Volks opera, not the same place, but.
Okay.
But that's a bit like that. Mozart was successful, but he earned a lot of money, but he also spent a lot of money. And he lost much money in playing billiard. And because he was not so good at billiard, but he played for money. But he also liked nice suits. So he spent a lot of money. And for me, Mozart represents everything connected to a freelance artist. So he was the first. He left Salzburg to be a freelance composer and performer. So he had all the qualities and all the problems of a freelance. I think he even manifested all these qualities and problems.
Yeah.
Because he was a divine being in that incarnating in that role, and so he is so much connected to Shri Vishnu as Narada. I mean, there are many stories where Narada starts a story that leads to Vishnu's incarnation, like Narashima, and also before Rama and before Krishna comes. It's a connection. Even Shri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that when he explains to Arjuna who he is, like he is the Himalaya of the mountains, I'm the Himalaya, and of the water, I'm the ocean. And he says of all the rishis and demigods, I am Narada. So there's a strong connection, and many, many years later, after this Magic Flute in New York, I understood more and more that this connection is much stronger than I thought. Like of Mozart and America and Shri Krishna and And so he is so much connected to Sri Vishnu. So that's again the Nabi. And the Nabi, he represents all the qualities of the Nabi, but also the catches, like this spending too much money. Or he represents all parts of the Nabi, I have the feeling. He also represents all parts of the Vishuddhi, like this expression. He makes divine music, he sings nicely, but also he might write something stupid in a text or yell at somebody. So that he's representing all parts of connected to Vishuddhi. He's representing all parts connected to the Nabi.
One thing that you were saying before we start recording about that Mozart would also improvise sometimes in his performances.
Yeah, the thing was when there was no like critics in those days, like critics writing in newspapers. That was bad or that was good. Because also in Vienna the emperor didn't like that some concerts were criticized. But so when you read about concerts, they would say, yeah, Herr Mozart played piano concerto and some symphony, but they would just tell what they did. But then they would write about great improvisations. Like a part of the concert was improvisation, and then the audience, like in Prague, they would somebody of the audience would scream or would say, yeah, please improvise about this aria from the Figaro, and then he would improvise. And people would say, or you get the feeling also of the written articles that this was the highlight of the performance. So, but that's something we can never experience. So it's a bit like, I'm going back to William Blake, it's a bit like William Blake composed music for his songs. Yeah. But we'll never experience that because it was not recorded.
Victor Vertuni managed to capture some of the songs.
Yeah. I mean, Victor seems like to adore Blake the same way that I adore Mozart. Like I appreciate Mozart so much, like he appreciates Blake, and these like Mozart is such a big part of my life in so many fields. He is from childhood until now. And
would you like to go into a deep meditation, travel in time, and see how it was actually Mozart? Or see
if I had a boon to go back in time, I would want to see Mozart playing a piano concerto.
This would be amazing.
Or to see him composing, or to see him improvising. So amazing. That would be, or just having fun. Like in his horoscope, they always say that he brings out the best in the others. Like the people who collaborated with him, they were always better than normally. Like the one, Emanuel Schulz, he was the librettist of the Magic Flute, and the Magic Flute is a work of genius, the text, and he never could reach that level again, because I think that people, when they worked with Mozart, they were on the one hand inspired by his genius, but on the other hand they just felt great because he was nice. He was a good friend. He had I think he created an atmosphere of friendship and
so
a
nice.
Was a
great leader as well, probably. You would say that.
I think so that he was a good leader when they performed an opera and he was leading everything.
He was also a director, or he was just mainly the conductor?
Yeah, he conducted it, but often the conducting was from the piano, like also playing with the orchestra. together and leading that. Later, it started to really be a conductor.
Okay.
But I think that it was a nice atmosphere, and in a nice atmosphere, you are better.
Yeah.
Like if you're
absolutely.
stressed and there's if it's just a professional collaboration with somebody, if you're talented and if you're a good artist, you can deliver and you can achieve certain goals. But if it's a nice atmosphere and you like your
Absolutely.
collaborator,
Yeah.
then it's better, of course.
So he managed really to create an amazing atmosphere. Everyone
and
felt welcome.
it already shows like in the horoscope, and also the horoscope of the time of his death is also interesting, because it says like he will be eternally famous, and he's always like he was always played. He's the first composer who was always played, and not just one part of his work, but all kind of pieces. Like there was never a time where the piano concerti were not played, or the symphonies, or the string quartets, or the operas. Perhaps then some special operas were not played, but like the most famous 5 or 6 operas always were played. So it's he's the first composer that never was forgotten. Like there were some composers, they were not played because it was not fashionable to play old music.
So he was always let's say in fashion. It was always present in his music.
He was always in the,
collective attention.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right, so it was I think it was a great conversation about Mozart. I don't know if you would like to add anything also that perhaps we have forgotten to speak about him, or because I think a lot of Sahaj yogis, they don't know actually that he was the incarnation of Narada.
Yeah, and most Sahaj yogis don't know so much about Narada.
Yeah,
Because Narada usually is not the main character of the big stories, but he is in all the stories. So he's immortal. Because he's a spirit. He has a spiritual body. Like he normally he appears and he goes, like he enters the 3 worlds and he comes there and he leaves again. And he's like in the Mahabharata, and he's also in the Ramayana. So he's the same person. Even Shri Vishnu incarnates as a new person.
Yeah.
But Narada is the same. So he's in the Mahabharata. For instance, he explains the Pandavas how to be married to Draupadi, as the 5 of them. Or he tells Yudhishthira how to be a good king, a dharmic king, and so not always about music, but of course music is Narada's speciality, and he was also private student of Sri Shiva, and he got some boons because he was singing so nicely. So Sri Shiva was so pleased by his singing. So he always was a singer, and he was a. The first boon he asked for was to be always devoted to the Supreme Lord. And he always says that Shri Shiva and Shri Vishnu is the same. Like he says, whoever thinks it's different is wrong. So they are the Supreme Lord. And he even organizes entertainment programs for the Pandavas in exile. So he like in Kabbalah, like an evening program for them. And like in before Narasimha incarnates, he protects
Narasimha is the incarnation of that is half lion, lion, and
half lion and half human. So there's this Rakshasa Hiranyakashipur, and he wants to rule the three worlds, and he goes to worship Brahmadeva, I think, and at that time the devas say, okay, we attack the asuras because they are weaker. So they come and they find the Rakshasa's wife, and she's pregnant, and they say, okay, we take the wife and later we kill the son. And then Narada appears and says, no, he will be a great saint.
It's
And it's
Prahlad.
Prahlad. And so he I think Prahlad is even born in Narada's ashram. And so he always praises Shri Vishnu and the boy in the womb of the mother, he gets all this knowledge and vibrations. And there's also the Dhruva story, where Narada explains this 6-year-old boy Dhruva how to praise Shri Vishnu, and he becomes then the Dhruva star in the end after his life. So there are many stories connected to Shri Vishnu and to Shri Krishna and with Narada. And the Ramayana, Narada was the guru of Valmiki, and Valmiki wrote the Ramayana, and Narada told Valmiki the story of the Ramayana before it even had happened. So there's a connection there as well.
Very strong, this connection. Yeah, it's actually I think most people, they don't know so much of the stories of Narada.
Yeah,
so you're an really expert in Mozart and Narada.
Yeah, because it's like I'm so much interested in that. You really have to search for these. There are famous stories, some famous stories of Narada, but they're not so interesting. Like they are okay. There is the really interesting stories are the stories before the stories. Like the Narada always appears before the Vishnu incarnation.
So it's usually most of the stories, they are cut now from the main story.
Yeah, most people they know the main story.
Yeah,
not how what happens before.
Yeah. So it would be a prequel.
Yeah, a great prequels. Narada is the master of prequels.
Yeah, amazing. So I don't know if there is any composition. You composed Mozart Infinity, right?
Yeah, that was like I have a collaboration with my wife Elisabeth Schulz, and as a pop duo we are called Eliem. It's like Elisabeth, Emanuel, Eliem, and one of our songs is called Mozart Infinity, and that was inspired by a chord progression of Mozart, of the Mozart Requiem.
Okay.
So there are some chords that inspired me for this composition. And it even was like presented 2 years ago at the birthday of Mozart in Austrian National Classic Radio.
So nice.
They presented, they were the first to present it.
So it's also on YouTube.
Yeah.
So we can. Yeah.
No, not on YouTube. You can hear it in Apple Music, iTunes, and Spotify, and.
All right. Okay. So you can leave a link in the description for this music.
And there are many other songs. There are many songs about Shri Mataji, so Eliem songs that we performed for Shri Mataji, that we composed for Shri Mataji, inspired by Shri Mataji. And many of them we played for her in person, like in Cabela Castle or in Genova, where Shri Mataji lived.
So I believe a lot of the Mozart compositions now you play by heart. You don't need to have the notes there to perform.
I know many compositions by heart, but like many melodies or many, not the full pieces perhaps, but many melodies and themes, especially the ones I use for meditation. Like my favorite is like the concerto for flute and harp and orchestra, the second movement, or the second movement of the clarinet concerto. So they're really great for meditation.
And is there because a lot of times now when you're playing music, you want to lose kind of yourself, not to be completely in the music and to be in the flow. So is there a favorite composition that would you say that makes you completely lose even the perception of being separate from the whole, and you completely
my favorite composition perhaps is really the Magic Flute, like as a whole.
Okay, as a whole.
Yeah, that's really divine. It's and the last three compositions is like of Mozart, they belong together for me. They're like La Clemenza di Tito is about forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
The Magic Flute is about enlightenment, and the Requiem is about redemption through death, like going into
Different.
Transcending
Okay.
out of life.
Samadhi.
So, yeah, Samadhi.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Perfect. So thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this conversation, you can find more interviews in our book, Virata, Conversation with Sahaj Yogis, Volume 1. You can purchase the book on Amazon, and you can find the link in the description of this episode. Thank you.